Ladies and gentlemen, we are now live on YouTube, Twitter, and on sportnarium.com/player with our guest. When I think about my 5 years of doing this on Sportswire Radio, our guest has been almost kind of like the mystery man. He has been one of the most difficult people to ever get on Sportswire, but he's doing the rounds for these shows. He's got good reason because he has got a huge show coming up he's going to be a part of on November the 3rd for our friends at Bolton Town Wrestling. You're going to see him on the 29th of October coming up as well. You've seen him in places like one of my all-time favorite companies, GT Ministries, Nonstop Action Wrestling. You've seen him most recently, and he has done it all in a short amount of time. He's even said he wants to wrestle one of my most recent guests, a true living legend. And even for a brief minute, literally a brief minute, he held that BTW championship. He needs no further introduction, but because this is the first time he's coming on here to Sportswire Radio, and all of his peers have gotten that introduction, it's time he gets it. So with that, further ado here on the Sports Report, number one global sports show from Bolton Town Wrestling and GT Ministries, Maverick Matt Wiliams. My friend, how are you?
Mate, I'm good. That was probably one of the best introductions I've ever heard in my life.
Well, you know what? And I'm doing this, if you can, in case you're listening to me, my voice is shot. And I think I'm getting sick, or I was sick, and it's just been terrible what's been going around. And I think I'm okay, but who knows? But I had to give you the introduction that everybody else has given. It is a tremendous honor to have you, because I spoke in the intro to bring you on. You really have been one of the most difficult people I have tried to get on Sportswire Radio. You have been Mr. Elusive. I remember asking you, I think like a year and a half ago after a GT Ministry show, because I think Gareth had said, well, do you want to bring on more of the talent? And I'm like, yes, obviously we had Bentley that was coming on a lot, Gareth himself, obviously the Modern Day Mafia, so on and so on. And you were like, well, I'm not ready. But now you were ready. And Maverick Matt Wiliams, you were certainly ready, because you got a big show coming up here on November the 3rd for Bolton Town Wrestling, Bolton Fury 3, and it looks like you're finally going to get your hands on a man that has really been making your life a living hell this year, Mr. Lucas Jackson. So for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, tell us what we can expect.
Mayhem. Mayhem. I've honestly been looking forward to this one. I mean, in terms of BTW, yeah, it's gone back slightly over a year. But I mean, me and Lucas actually started out about the same time, about 4 years ago. So there's so much history. It's like it started out as just being a bit of one-upmanship stuff. And since he's become the GM at Bolton Town, I like to think he's just using his power. I don't know why he's got it in for me. But it comes to a head in November, because I've literally just tried to do my own thing, try to get the wins where possible. But yeah, he seems to constantly derail me, give me like unnecessary hurdles in the way. It was last November on Play Fury 2.
Yep.
When you've already touched it, I did briefly win the W title. There's a lot of emphasis on the brief. We'll circle back to that later. But again, he made me start that match from number one. Then obviously what happened there with Jack taking the title off it, yep. Trying to regain it, didn't work out. Went into the Rumble again. He's penalised me.
But you're number 2 in the Rumble, and you hung in there a long time, because we spoke about the Rumble with Bentley, who wound up winning the Rumble, and you were there a long time, and it's almost like a what if. Even if you would have drew Bentley's number, you probably would have won the Rumble, and we're talking about you as the champion instead of Bentley almost.
Exactly. So, as it is a case of what is. And there's been several instances of that throughout last year, and the biggest factor seems to be Lucas Jackson getting him away. Or as he likes to put it, make me raise up my game.
Well, do you feel like you've raised up your game? Because you've had an interesting last few shows. Obviously, the Rumble in itself, and you've been teaming up with somebody I mentioned shortly ago, which was Mr. Gareth Angel. You've kind of had this interesting team, and do you feel like your game has been raised? Because, oh, by the way, you've been put up some really tough opponents, all people I know extremely well. You wrestled the Wrecking Crew, which I had them on, ages ago, many times. Dave, Anthony Getsky now. He was Davey Getsky when I had him on. He's Anthony Getsky now, and Chris Stone. The Sledgehammer now, Chris Stone. And then you wrestled, oh, by the way, a guy, Jenna, and Eitan Steen, who's a champion in another promotion. So, I mean, those guys I all know well. So do you feel like your game has been raised despite all this that Lucas has put you through, sir?
I do. I think, I've stepped up as much as I can. Obviously, I have been taking the losses, which is a an issue. But again, it's this constant thing in the back of my mind. What's he going to do next? How am I going to get penalised next? I think Lucas is definitely going to find out what the apex of my game is in a month or so.
Oh, we're going to find out. And I've even put it here on the ticker. You can follow Bolton Town Wrestling because we've added some new things, and we'll certainly make sure people go and support Bolton Town Wrestling. I'll get to comments shortly in a second. And, also talking about this is, and I've obviously covered Bolton Town almost, I think, since the beginning, because I think you guys debuted like right after all like the lockdowns were lifted. So we're talking 2+ years. I'm pretty sure we're going into like our 13th show, and I feel like Bentley's been on like almost all of the shows throughout the time talking about you guys. I don't know, somebody can go check it. But I mean, this is the biggest show of the year. It's also the last show of the year. So Maverick, do you feel more pressure because it's the last show? It's the show that everybody's going to think about here going into 24. Give me your thoughts on all that.
I mean, I do always try and go into every match, this is the one, this is where it needs to be. But yeah, there is something about pleasure, mainly because it always falls on my birthday weekend as well. So there's that added thing of like, I want to go out and enjoy myself because it's my birthday, but at the same time, I also want to like Fury one, I was actually ill. Well, I had a decent match against the referee the first time.
I think I remember that match, yes.
Fury 2 will always be that special because finally, come back from a slightly rocky first year. Had an amazing run, undefeated Maverick Open Challenge. And then Bonfire Fury 2, I actually won the big, when I won the big one. If you look at who was in that match, there was like Stocks, Bentley, Rarebit, Joey Hayes, and Dean Allmark, and yet Angle walking out of the title. That one actually was on my birthday, and it felt like the greatest birthday I've ever had, really.
Well, when you mentioned some of those names, I'm going to get to them here, but I do have a comment which I think might be addressing you in a different way. And Daniel Banner says the audio is cutting in and out a bit. I'm hearing a little bit of that also. So if you, while I read off comments, you want to make an adjustment or two, I'll certainly let people say hello. Want to say hello to somebody from the state of California, 2 people from California. Anastasia Racina, we say hello to Anastasia. I know, obviously, as you can tell, my voice is a little hoarse as well, but we're certainly pinch hitting. I want to say hello to Skulls the Soul Hunter, also from California, might even be from the next town over. Just don't be Chris Nasty, sit out most of the match and still manage to lose. Well, that was kind of the Tommy Dillon strategy in the GT Ministries Rumble there that Bentley wound up winning, and that didn't work out either. So also he wants to wish a happy birthday to Mr. Big Time of Compton Mania. Obviously, I do some work out there in California because one of the people you wrestled, Jenna, actually wrestled for my friend's promotion, the Wrestling War Zone. So we'll certainly get to that. Also, Daniel would like to say hello. Obviously, Daniel's doing some training in GT Ministries under Sean Only, and you know Sean Only very well.
Yeah.
and he says something about me with doing his best. I want to say hello to Mr. Young Horace, who's in the house. Obviously, you know Young Horace very well from GTM and a number of other places. He's another emerging talent here. So obviously, we'll see about some of those different things here. But obviously, let's talk about the fact that you did wrestle some different names. And I want to get to Mr. Allmark. I'm going to get to him. I'm going to certainly come back. But you've been some really interesting opponents of late. Now, I want to talk about somebody I had on the show months ago in Jenna. And what was that like being in the ring with Jenna? Because I know you're not like the deathmatch guy, but Jenna has become known for like being almost like the GCW guy of the UK. And we had him on right before he went to wrestle for my buddy Darrow. So talk to me about that experience of wrestling Jenna there.
Yeah, he is actually he's a fantastic talent. I know his deathmatch stuff. He's absolutely mental, but he actually backs it up so well with like, the technical side of it, innovative offense. Like he can kick in angles you won't even see coming. He's absolutely fantastic. He's one of them guys that really should be like on every show.
Yeah, he's become almost in a way. I mean, he's become, I guess, the definition also of a pro wrestler because Jenna, I almost can't keep up with him because he's somebody that we wanted to come and have him back on Sportswire, but it's so hard with his schedule also because he's booked almost like every weekend. He's going on the path of like a Martin Kirby, Johnny Storm. Obviously Dino, we'll get to Dino. I'm going to definitely get to him. But I mean, Jenna's almost like a guy that he's so in demand right now. Like he's skyrocketed, I feel like, over the last year or two in terms of like the demand for him to wrestle a show.
And rightly so.
Oh, 1,000%. Oh, 1,000%. And what he does, and like you correctly pointed out, yes, he does the moves off the almost the building and he jumps off everybody. But if you actually watch him in the ring, he's somebody that's very versatile with his moveset and what he brings to the table. And I'm curious in a way because it's funny because you've actually only been wrestling a few years, but I feel like I've known you for like 20 years. And it's kind of so weird. But Jenna's actually like a guy that's been around the block a while. Have you like asked him or any things about some of his moveset or other things? Because I know you've actually had an interesting background. So I was just curious if, guys like a Jenna, do you approach them and ask them on different things or just different things you want to add to your moveset?
Not so much ask. I'm very I'm also quite a shy person in the locker room.
Oh, I've heard that before because you haven't come on here. I asked you almost 2 years ago, so think about it. You're here now because now we're getting into it. But yeah, you're a guy that likes to put your actions to be backed up in the ring. So I really respect that because you won the BTW title, so it clearly worked.
Yeah, like I said, it's almost like it's like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. Day-to-day life, I'm very quiet, just keep myself. It's only like when I'm going out through the curtain that I take on the different persona and the different characteristics. While I don't necessarily ask a lot, I always watch quite a lot because, as you said, I have only been wrestling a couple of years. What I tend to do is I'll literally just watch everything back countless times. I watch all the links to the shows, but I'll watch it 2 or 3 times. So I'll watch it once as a fan, then I'll watch it as a wrestler, and then I'll start dissecting it, thinking, oh, this works for me. I might take this, but I might do it this way. So generally, I will watch most shows 3 times.
Well, that's interesting you said that as we're here speaking with Maverick, Matt Wiliams. My name is the Reverend Tom Rice, the man behind Sportswire Radio. I'll get to some more comments in a second, but I kind of feel the same way, when I bring different people on, I like to watch the shows and even like the GTM shows because I always say, which I'm sure you've heard, I always love GTM because I can watch the show live in real time. So I get a chance to watch it the first time. Then when we bring somebody on, when Disciple was in the company, we bring him on first spot every month. And obviously Bentley's been doing the spots regularly. Gareth has been on here from time to time, so on and so on. And I'll watch the show the first time. Then the second time I'll watch it and I watch it almost probably like you and tell me your thoughts on this almost as like a student of the game because the first time you watch it, it's like, okay, I'm in the moment. But then if I watch it the second time, it's almost like I get a chance to maybe see something that I maybe should have did or could have did differently, but almost in a way also I can go back objectively speaking and watch something and maybe I pick up on something. Almost like I used to play music, and as a musician, you'd always got to go back and listen to the CD and you listen for certain parts that you didn't pick up on when you were playing it. I mean, talk to me about your thoughts on all that.
No, I think that's exactly it. I think you hit the nail on the head though. Like I said, it's the first time you obviously you want to watch it because you're a fan. So you're watching it for the pop, you're watching it for the highest parts, the storytelling. And then like I said, it's the rewatching it where you start picking up the technical elements and what's actually happening. And you learn to break it down that way.
I could certainly see all that here. And Daniel Banner also wants to bring up he'll be using his Hadouken again. Well, I mean, it didn't really work last time. I hope it works for you next time. He also says Matt would maybe love to face some of the newer guys up in the academy. I am going to come to GT Ministries. I promise I'm going to come into GT Ministries and maybe we'll talk about some of those different things because obviously I watch you a bit and I want to talk about Gung Ho Muttley and some of those different things. I want to come into that. But obviously with Bolton Town, I actually do want to also talk about the fact that you've had some interesting opponents. And again, and you've wrestled Jack Johnson. And Jack is somebody that I've had on here in the show. And, you know, it's funny. You're going to probably chuckle when I say this, but it's always the running comparison is Jack Johnson and Anthony Getsky. They're almost like twins. They're lookalikes. My joke has always been, though, that Jack Johnson's slightly better looking. He's from Salford. And he talks a little more. You know, I love Getsky. Getsky might have slightly the better body, but I think Jack checks off some of those things. But Jack has obviously been one of those guys from the first time I had him on, almost when I asked you about almost 2 years ago to come on. He's really come into his own. He's been a guy that you can really trust. He held the GTM title. He held the Bolton Town title for a while. And I was curious, and, you know, what's it been like? You've obviously also been aligned with Jack and GTM in the past. Obviously, you guys had a little bit of a group with Alex Boylan. That was certainly interesting last year where you guys were kind of feuding with Gareth at the time. And I was kind of curious for the audience. And, you know, what's it been like working against Jack and maybe even working alongside him at times in the past?
I can probably quite safe to say quite weird, but I'd say Jack is probably my favourite opponent.
Really?
Yeah, he's the guy. I mean, I think I've faced him. I've been in more matches with him than anyone else.
You know what? I would, if I counted GTM between tag, singles, probably 6 times, maybe something like that, 5-6 times at least.
About 6. And I said, I don't know, something about him. It makes you up your game aggressively better. Like the match that we had, the rematch, the BTW title.
Correct.
It's my favorite match. Yeah, I lost, but that is my absolute favorite match. I agree. It was just, you know, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
I've heard that line before. When with Jack, and that's why I love that you said that about Jack, because when I watch Jack in the ring, he's been so good with so many different opponents. You know, he's had great matches, obviously, with yourself. I think about some of the stuff he's done with Bentley, obviously, in GTM and in Bolton Town, the work he's had with Rarebit, obviously the stuff he's done with Gareth in the past. I mean, I think about Disciple, he had a match with also earlier in the year where he's working a totally different character you used to. So what I think has been great about Jack has kind of been one of those guys that can work with anybody and have a great match. And you've obviously been coming into your own also. And it goes back to your point about maybe in a twisted way about Lucas raising your game. Jack raised your game.
Yeah, I think, again, you hit him on the head again. I couldn't say any better.
Well, we're going to try to do a little bit better. I want to say hello to our friends in the state of Iowa, the IMF. They're getting ready for their winter bash coming up in the month of December, and they say hello as well. And if you like what you hear from Bolton Town Wrestling, please support them on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's Bolton Town Wrestling. It's Bolton Wrestling on Twitter as well. And I've always said, and I think, and you'll appreciate this, you can take this anywhere you want. I always speak with different wrestlers on and off the air, and they'll always tell me Bolton Town's one of their favorite places. And Bolton Town, I think in my 2.5+ years of covering UK wrestling, has always been at the top of my list because of the amount of talent that you have, the types of matches. You guys almost blend everything in. It's almost like a mix where you get like, some of not so much mainstream wrestlers, but then you get the family friendly and kind of everybody in between, and it's all blended in. That's why we love Bolton Town Wrestling, and we want people to continue to support Bolton Town Wrestling. And I want to say hello also to Mr. Soldier GP. He's one half of the IMF Tag Team Champions. They're on YouTube as well. You can check them out. They have about 1,500 subscribers. But let's talk about, obviously, before I do come into GTM, he's technically a part of GTM. What's it been like teaming with Gareth Angel? Because, Gareth is another guy that I'm not used to seeing him in tag team wrestling, but yet in Bolton Town, we've seen you and him teaming together. And what's it been like teaming with Gaz?
It's been great because actually he's considerably more experienced, so obviously I'm learning from the experience. But again, like our ideologies are very similar. We're both Christian guys. We're both kind of involved in like the backstage side of things. So he's just someone that I can generally bounce ideas off, and vice versa. Both similar age, similar kind of family, both got kids. He's the lead version of me. So,
well, don't sell yourself short because you've done a pretty good amount of things in a short amount of time. I know Gaz, Mr. Angel, has the experience over you, no question about that. But I think you've certainly come into your own, and I almost have to, I guess, throw it out there in a way. And you've done some different things and obviously some backstage stuff. I'm not going to really go too much into it because we have you as Maverick, Matt Wiliams. And as I was telling you off the air, I kind of want to at least keep it that way. But what have you learned, though, in some ways of being involved in other capacities that's maybe shaped your experiences in your own career, but also relationships with many of your peers?
I think really it goes back to the fact that I've just been really fortunate with who I've got to work against more than not. Whether that's because I've had a bit of a say or not, I've just seemed to have always drawn quite good opponents, quite good stories, been given opportunities that someone who is quite young in the career might not necessarily have got. Like my first ever match was a tag match against former NXT UK Tyson Tebow and British legend Joey Hayes.
Oh, Joey Hayes is almost like the standard bearer. I feel like everywhere I look, Joey Hayes is wrestling somewhere, which understandably so.
But I think because I've kind of, again, been really fortunate with these being my first ever matches, I've been given countless amounts of experience. So people do, I've had a couple of people talk to me and think that I'm further along in my wrestling career than I actually am, just because the level of learning that I've got, the level of experience, like from my opponent that I've faced, it has kind of propelled me quite rapidly.
Yeah, and that's why, like, again, as we're here with Maverick Matt Wiliams, and of course, you can also check him out on Facebook as well, Maverick Matt Wiliams. Definitely say hello to him. We'll plug our Sportswire radio things in a second. But, again, that's what it amazes me so much about your career. I didn't realize until like a week ago that you've only had a few years experience. I feel like I've been watching you for so long, and you've been wrestling longer than that, because it's like you said, you've been pretty much in there from the very beginning, whether it's in GTM or in Bolton Town, where I've watched the majority of your work, obviously, and you've wrestled almost like guys that have either been world champions or have been probably wrestling longer than you. And it's like, that's amazing. Do you feel like, in a way, almost, Maverick, that you've actually kind of like, not that you've come up quick in a short amount of time, but maybe you have, because like the quality of your opponents, has been like so good almost through the very beginning?
Yeah, I said it's exactly that. Basically, I debuted properly about a month before BCW started. I've only actually been around for about 2.5 years. So really, like I said, it is just who I've worked, where I've worked. That's obviously places have put faith in me to kind of give me at least, up and mid card, sometimes even title main event spots. And obviously I'm eternally grateful for that. And I think, yeah, it's kind of, it definitely fast tracked the first couple of years. So hopefully I can just kind of keep building on that. And obviously even improve again the constant main event, or at least, up there.
No, you know what? And I think that's the thing. You've always, at least from watching you, like you said, 2.5 years, I've been watching you now for about 2. So that's just about the same time. And you've always been in like really good or like one of the more interesting storylines. Obviously, we'll get to you and Gung Ho and that tag team connection shortly. I think about your work in BTW and some other places. You've always been like right in the middle of things. I mean, you even tagged, which I thought was so wild. You even tagged with one of my old friends from the LWF, the Asset Stephen Cross. I mean, that was an interesting experience. And you guys wrestled like on I think it was a carnival or something like that in June. And I mean, you have to bring that up because you guys wrestled the Modern Day Mafia. That was almost like I think Joel Cobra might have just been returning to like ring shape at that time. And you tagged with a guy in Stephen Cross, who, if you think about it, Stephen Cross is a guy that I had him on. I first had him on before everybody came back. And he's a guy now I see him in Future Shock. I see him in, he's been a linchpin in the LWF. I've seen him in Bolton Town. He's a guy that's really progressed and seen him in different places. And you have to talk about my old friend, the Asset Stephen Cross, who I think it's him and Rick Marcus. So I've always said have the best bodies in this sport. And Rick is not really as active anymore. So I think that the Asset Stephen Cross takes the cake because he literally doesn't eat cake. And he's literally got a body that's got maybe negative body fat. So you have to talk to me about tag teaming with the Asset Stephen Cross.
Yeah, honestly, like, the guy is in such peak physical shape.
Yep.
It was when we were going out for the match, I was like, I'm going to put the t-shirt back on, I think. Honestly, like, I think you're right. There's not an ounce. I know you think he eats ounce. I'm just convinced just like inhaled protein.
Oh, I would say it on the air all the time. And I was like,
no.
I was going to say, do you have body fat? And he would chuckle. He would go, oh, you would kind of laugh at it. But it's true. It's like he's got like the best body, I think, in the sport, pound for pound.
Absolutely. I think he's got muscles in places that I don't even have places. I've never felt so small in all my life, and I'm quite a small guy.
And you're not in bad shape either. It's not like, you're no chopped liver, but it's like you see him in the ring and it's like this guy, on top of that, he might have the stiffest chops of anybody around. The way he punches is like, I think his punches would probably knock me out if he just went like this. I mean, what he does in the ring, I mean, I've been saying for such a long time, I'd love to see him lock up with this guy and that guy. And he's done that almost. I mean, he's just like, I'd love to see you and him do more of that in the future. Maybe we will see some of that. I would love to see it one day.
Yeah, it was a weird carnival show in a way, because obviously we did face the Modern Day Mafia, who have an established team, whereas us two were just kind of almost two singles guys, just kind of thrown together at the last minute. But like, we had really quite good chemistry in that match. But yeah, I think he gave Joel like a clothesline or some kind of strike, and even I winced.
And if Joel gets that, who we love on Sportswire, if he knocks Joel Cobra down, that tells you that, like, listen, he locked up with RPD. I'm trying to think, was it in a Rumble in Future Shock? Because we had RPD after that. And it might have been, I'm trying to think, it was last year because they locked up in a Rumble somewhere. And even RPD said, RPD is obviously a boxer. He's a boxing champion. He goes, yeah, you know what, Tom? He goes like this. Stephen Cross did connect. He didn't get me down. I'm used to that stuff, but he was like, Stephen Cross is a worthy competitor. So that tells you that, that carnival was like a big crowd, by the way. You were wrestling like in a really big crowd. Those carnivals, I always find so fascinating. But, you spoke about the fact that, you've been doing a lot of tag team stuff. And I was curious, you started out as a singles guy in a way. How do you like that adjustment? Because, some guys don't feel comfortable doing it. Other guys, it's like they kind of like get used to it. They feed off each other. But, how have you liked maybe going and back and forth from being a singles guy to a tag guy?
I really enjoyed it actually because when I first started out, I was like, oh yeah, definitely going to be the singles guy. Obviously, I'm quite a smaller guy, so I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to be the cruiserweight, doing that kind of matches. But then it seems like I've got more and more opportunities in tags, either like storyline wise or just thrown together. And I quite enjoy feeding off like my partner and the opponents and then come up with creativity, do different moves and stuff. So I've had quite a wide spectrum of partners. So I kind of learned different things from that. But I still would consider myself predominantly a singles guy, but I do really enjoy tag wrestling as well.
Yeah, I think there's a certain flow to it, and obviously you still think it raises you. Again, we're going to use raise your game as a line there, but I still think in terms of some of the things you do and the experience that you gain, I think it's very worthy, and we are very worthy and honored to have on Mr. Maverick Matt Wiliams. He is a superstar, one of the long awaited guest that we have had wanting to come on to Sportswire Radio. We have finally done it. I hope it is worth the wait. Unfortunately, my voice is a little in the dumps, but we never take a day off on Sportswire, and Maverick Matt Wiliams, for good reason, we don't take a day off for, and we want to support him in everything that Bolton Town Wrestling does on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Bolton Town Wrestling. There's also some stuff out there on YouTube through Apple facilities. You can go out there and check out some of the shows. The Over the Top show is on there as well. Some other video packages you can check out there. Also, GT Ministries UK. You can support them on all their platforms. It's now Wrestling Church FCB, where you can watch some of the most recent GTM shows on Facebook and also YouTube. So please support them also. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, the man behind Sportswire Radio, your voice of all wrestling, the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio. And if you want to support us, we are on YouTube now. You can check out all of our previous shows, including a guy named Dean Olmark, who was on the show here, Mr. Dino himself. And speaking of guys that know a thing or two about Dean Olmark, next Friday in Maverick Matt Wiliams' chair is Mr. Dean Ford. Mr. Ford is here in the house. He's going to be here next Friday, 8 o'clock British Standard Time, and he's going to talk about his decorated career, and so I'm very, very excited about that. And I'll have another announcement toward a guest that you're going to probably have some interest in that is coming on to Sportswire before Bolton Fury 3. We'll talk about all of that and some. I'll also have more coverage coming up here later this weekend on Sunday night with the Real Deal Anthony Steele. Have some big shows ahead coming up with our friends over at Nonstop Action Wrestling. And by the way, the Bolton Town Wrestling Champion Bentley will be back before the 3rd of November, but stay tuned for details of all of that. But if you like what you hear from us, we also have an internet radio station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content on sportinarium.com/player. I have to ask you about Sheik El Sham. Sheik El Sham is one of those guys that is basically, he is at the top of the mountain. He has been in a WWE ring. He is obviously the definition of PCW, and some of our friends obviously have been involved in that in the past on Sportswire Radio. Joey Hayes, I think, is synonymous with PCW, and I'll get to Mr. Olmark amongst many others. But what did you learn from being under the tutelage of the legendary Sheik El Sham?
I can only say I will always be grateful for Sheik. I think he's a fantastic trainer. He was one of my original trainers, and I think just the level of psychology that he imparts as part of his training is one of the things that has put me ahead quite well. He's just a phenomenal wrestler. The stuff he does is breathtaking. But like I said, in terms of training wise, I will always be grateful for what he's done.
Yeah, and you learn from somebody like him who's really, in this sport, you almost couldn't have asked for anybody better to learn from. His learning tree, his success his experiences. It's almost like similar to how Daniel Banner is learning from a Sean Only. Sean Only is another guy, just a phenomenal, phenomenal talent, and what he does in the ring, speaks volumes. And obviously, learning from the Sheik and certainly his advice. And speaking of other people that I do have to finally bring, because I got to talk about GTM in a second, amongst that announcement that I have for you, sir, at the end of the show. But you obviously mentioned most recently, and this is kind of how we finally reconnected, because I had on Dean Allmark, and Dean Allmark obviously came on. What an honor. I want to thank my friend, Mr. Luke Leland, for the opportunity in that. But Mr. Allmark said a lot. And then you heard some of the things that Mr. Allmark said, and you were quoted that one of your dream opponents is Dino himself, the legendary Dean Allmark, the true definition of a professional wrestler, everybody's favorite wrestler. He is the inspiration and some. And of course, he was a trainer for a very, very long time. The man has wrestled 5,000 plus times. I could go on all day about Dean Allmark, but I want to give you the opportunity now here live on Sportswire Radio. And I'll certainly make sure that Mr. Allmark gets wind of this. And you said one of your dreams is to wrestle him. So now I give you the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, you've said it. Like, he is the epitome of British wrestling, in my opinion. Love the guy, and I honestly, I want that match. I'd love to face Dino, because we were both in the championship scramble where I won the title back in BTW, but we never actually did anything together. I think I was out cold. I was just put myself for a table while Dean was wrestling, so we never actually touched the entire match. But yeah, it's definitely the one that's like top of my wish list. I actually got a bit worried because I think like a year or so ago, he was talking about calling it a day.
Yes, we spoke about that. Actually, I'm glad you said that, because I think in the interview we actually opened up with that, and we were like, I was like, wait a minute, you're Dean freaking Allmark. You're Dean Allmark, who has traveled and wrestled in Japan. You wrestled in TNA. You wrestled in Italy, and you're gonna think about retiring. You're Dean freaking Allmark. And then he was like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that. I was like, you think? You're Dean Allmark.
No, I really hope he doesn't.
No, he's not now. He actually announced live on Sportswire when we had him on last month. He's like, nope, I'm not retiring anymore. He's like, thank you for the nice words. I'm like, you're welcome.
Brilliant. I've always said, like, as much as I want the match, I want to make sure I'm good enough to kind of to deserve the match first. Like, I want to know that I'm not being carried. I'm not just going to let the team down, kind of thing. I want to make sure that I'm at the top of my game, so I'm not embarrassing myself. But yeah, 100%. I want my match. Don't mind where it is. It could be in some little gym with nobody watching. I don't care. I want that match before he calls it.
So you don't care. So correct me if I'm wrong before I get to comments. You want this match anywhere. Now I know you're obviously going to be busy in the month of November in BTW, and I know Mr. Allmark is going to be busy in the month of October. And he might have some downtime after that. But let me get this correct, though, just so I know for the audience, and I let Mr. Allmark know this, because I'm going to do this right when we go off the air, and I'm going to make sure specifically to tag Mr. Allmark. You want this match anywhere. So it doesn't matter anywhere, any place, you want that match.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I prefer it at BTW. That's my baby. That's my home promotion. That's where, I might actually have some fans.
Well, I'm sure that Mr. Allmark would be very accommodating for the next BTW show after Mr. Jackson. You get, or you may dispose of Mr. Jackson. I'm going to come back to Mr. Jackson. I got something up my sleeve for you on that. But I'm sure Mr. Allmark could be accommodating sometime in the next show that'll be in 24, whether it's in January or March. We'll certainly work out some of those details, and I'm certainly sure that we can make that happen here from Mr. Allmark. So I'm going to definitely promise you that he'll have a response to that, because he's coming back to Sportswire next month because he's got to address RPD. Because RPD, we spoke about Mr. Allmark wrestling RPD, and RPD actually said, well, you know what? Yeah, I know who Dean Allmark is. I got 3 world championships, and I'm coming back to Sportswire to address this. And then Mr. Allmark said, I'm certainly going to be listening to that and coming right back afterwards. So I'm going to certainly make sure I try to make your dream come true. And speaking of people's dreams, I want to say hello to the Big Cheese Logan. The Tribal Cheese is out there from Scotland. Last I checked, he was in Italy. Then before that, I saw him show up in CCW. He says he's sending love to his friends. And he says we all have to get old and retire someday. Well, not technically, because Ric Flair wrestled last year, and then he was said, well, you know, I'm not really done. I'll wrestle again. Hulk Hogan a few months ago said, I feel the best I felt in 30 years. Maybe I've got one more run in you. So, I mean, listen, Billy Gunn's 60. He's still going. Chris Jericho's still going. I mean, Jeff Jarrett's still going. I mean, Edge retired for, 9 years, and he's the talk of the wrestling world. So, you know, the Tribal Cheese, you know I acknowledge you, but almost in wrestling, you can never say never at this point. There's plenty of names that are missing that would certainly fit that. So we'll make sure that Mr. Allmark gets wind of that. But, you know, I want to talk about GT Ministries because you have really been a part of one of the more fascinating tag teams, and obviously alongside Mr. Gung Ho Muttley. Mr. Gung Ho Muttley, a man I've had on a few times, and you've obviously had, it's almost like the Maverick and Gung Ho connection, and you guys have obviously had some really, really good matches in GTM, and you guys, in a way, kind of fit each other. You've almost got similar styles in some way. Maybe Gung Ho's a little bit more of a high flyer, I would say, than you, but you've become really one of the more enjoyable tag teams. I know you had said a few weeks back that you would still like some gold with Gung Ho and GTM. Hopefully someday that'll definitely happen. And let's talk about GT Ministries and this tag team with Gung Ho Muttley, because you guys have had some really awesome work, and you guys, in a way, have almost kind of stolen some of these GT Ministry shows over the last several months.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I love with Gung. Gung is amazing. He's a fantastic talent. He's just a good guy to be around, fun. And yeah, I think I don't want to jinx it too much, but I think if GT Ministries did come up with tag titles, me and Gung Ho should definitely be in the conversation, if not necessarily like at the top of the conversation. I think we do gel really well together, considering we kind of formed. It seems to sum up my career so far, but we almost formed by accident.
Yeah, right, because Gung Ho was away for a while. He came back in the Rumble last year, and then you guys, a few months later, were kind of aligned because you basically kind of needed each other. You saved each other in a match, and you guys were in almost kind of like similar spots in GTM because you were aligned for a while with Jack and Boylan, and then that kind of blew up. And then it was almost kind of like you were left to fend for yourself, and so was Gung Ho, because he had a connection literally with old school MC2, who we know is now on the microphone here calling the shows in GTM. So you guys, kind of almost like it wasn't by design.
No, we were literally 2 singles wrestlers adrift, basically, with no real direction. But then thought, you know what, we both look similar. Let's see how this works.
Well, you cut your hair, though. You did cut your hair. You used to have the long. I'm still trying to get used to you with the short hair look. I'm sure, it looks better on you, but you did at a time have the same kind of style as him hair-wise, and you cut the hair off.
Yeah, it was always a plan. It was a charity thing growing out anyway. Sure. I mean, from experience yourself.
You know what's funny? You said that because I have actually been offered, and I don't need the money, thankfully. Thankfully, I'm financially okay in life. I've been offered like a lot of money to shave my mutton chops off and cut my hair. And I'm like, I'm always afraid if I cut them off, I'll never be able to grow it back because it's going to come to a point. Like, I haven't cut my hair since I'm out of high school. I mean, so we're talking for like 15 years. So I'm like, I think we're like the same age. So like, I'm terrified now at this point if I shave my hair and cut it, because I don't think I can grow it back. And then my mutton chops, I've been growing literally since I started Sportswire. And I'm now like totally superstitious with that because nobody remembers me like without it. So it's like, I can't do it.
So yeah, it was just a really good partnership between the two of us that seemed to. I don't want to say out of necessity because like it was a conscious decision to get together and do a tag team, and like I said, we just gelled so well that it just carried on going and growing.
Yeah, I feel like, and obviously we're talking here with Maverick Matt Wiliams from Bolton Town Wrestling and GT Ministries, and we're hanging out with him a little while longer. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, the man behind Sportswire Radio. I'm very honored to have on Mr. Maverick Wiliams, the former BTW champion. He'll be in the ring coming up on October the 29th and also November the 3rd, most importantly, for Bolton Fury 3. And he's going to be in the ring with Lucas Jackson. I don't know how that's going to certainly work out, but I'm sure it could work out to the benefit of Mr. Wiliams. But, it's funny because I think now that we've added gold on the women's end in GTM, we finally added that. I kind of do think that if tag gold is added in GTM, that you guys would definitely be prime candidates. And, one of the reasons I think that you guys as a team really gelled, and you guys had a match with, I guess it would be just before they formed or before they became Denson, if I can say that. That's Slugger Hampton and Tommy Diamond. You guys had a match that, you spoke about at the beginning of the show, that you watch your own matches or shows a couple of times over. This was a match that I probably watched like 3 times over at least. And I think still to this day, it might have been the best tag team match I've seen anywhere the entire year. That's really where I feel like you guys crystallize as a team. I know you guys were aligned a little bit before that, and you guys have had some stuff done since, and you guys have actually kind of wrestled them in some different places. But talk about that match, because I really think it was probably the best tag team match I watched the entire year.
Well, thank you. High praise to hear someone say that. Yeah, it was one of those. It was like the stars aligned, and it was just a great match to be in.
There was the one spot, I think, where Gung Ho went out and he jumped outside the ring and hit everybody. And then there was another spot in the match, I think, where I think they hit their finisher on you guys. It might have been on you, and it was like we thought the match was over and you kicked out. And then there was another spot in the match. It was almost like it went back and forth. It almost reminded me of like a historic boxing fight where you're watching something and it's like they're going back and forth. They're punching each other, and it's like they're going to the 9th round, the 10th round, the 11th round, the 12th round, because that was, if I'm not mistaken, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that was one of the longer matches I think I've seen in GTM this year, because you guys were in the ring for like over 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. That was like, you guys got a lot of time, for a match that wasn't the main event. And that's why I think, in a way, you guys stole the show on that card in a way, because that was kind of at the time it was like Disciple and Bentley were going back and forth. And you guys really like, I think you might have got the most time, I think, if anybody had in the year, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. That was a really good match with so many like memorable spots in that.
I've never actually timed it, to be honest. Quite possibly, it did seem like quite a while. But like I said, once you're in there, the adrenaline's pumping. You're going all out, trying to get that win. Everything else kind of fades into the background. Again, there were 2 really tough guys that are doing their own thing. They're unique. They're more unique now, but like even back then, they're still absolutely solid competitors. I can't praise them high enough, but me and Gunga, we are going to be the future. Well, the present, really.
But you guys definitely there was a certain chemistry that you guys had. You don't always get this at this level. I watch a lot of wrestling, and I like to think that I'm pretty adverse in terms of like who everybody is at this point. I watch all the shows, and I think that that's what sets me apart as a host versus other contemporaries that cover this, is I feel I'm adverse, I'm knowledgeable, and I think that that's why you're here, frankly. But in that match, I really felt like that. And I was speaking with Gung Ho, and I think I could say this on the air. I spoke with Gung Ho after the match, and I said, that was a really great match. Congratulations. I was watching the match. In fact, it was such a special match that when I saw the match, I actually was just I just went to the movies, and I specifically made sure to take my phone with me to watch the GTM show. And then I think I was a little bit behind in time, and your match came up, and I actually stopped what I was doing, and I just watched your match, and I wound up going home after the movies and watching the match again. And that's how impressed I was with that match. So I would like to see more tag team wrestling in GTM. And GTM has been a home at times for some really good tag teams. Obviously, you guys have come into fruition. The Modern Day Mafia have been here at times. Obviously, Joel and Dave Douglas, AJ Grimm. I mean, certainly when the Working Class Militia were active, obviously when Gung Ho was with old school MC2. So I've always felt in a lot of ways that GTM has been a home for tag team wrestling. And I would hope that I would get to see you guys more in the ring. I know obviously we'll have one more GTM show in November, which I think is the 16th, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but I just think the chemistry that you guys had in that match, I think that's why people have really taken a liking to you guys. And in the Fountains Church in Bradford, you guys have become fan favorites. You kind of turned around. You know, when you first came into GTM, you know, you were kind of like this guy that was like, you know, trying to fit in and trying to like do things. You're almost like going about it, maybe not that the people in Bradford were happy about, but now you and Gung Ho have kind of become like fan favorites, I think, because people respect what you're doing in the ring.
Yeah. So again, you're spot on this one. So when I first started at GT Ministries, again I was, you know, your standard, almost cookie cutter wrestler who's just trying to get his own way. Yeah, I was favourable. You know, I had a good reaction, but again, wasn't really doing anything. Got more of a reputation. Then I may have had that moment where I kind of did that thing with Gaz.
Yes.
I like that. People do not like it if you turn on Gaz. But then, like I said, I went to being like not quite Jack level hated, but definitely was not liked.
No, you weren't liked, and Gareth was trying to talk to you and say, "What are you doing? What's wrong with you? Don't you see it?" And it was kind of like that back and forth there for a time last year. So yeah, you weren't Jack level hated, you weren't Sean Only or Disciple level hated, but you were like the next level below it.
But then, like I said, Bradford is probably like my second favorite crowd because they get such passion and they get so invested in the stuff that I had the greatest face turn ever. I did literally nothing.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, you're right. You know what? You didn't. Yeah.
I had this nice little, probably 5-minute monologue of like how I'm repentant and I'm here to like make a difference and I'm sorry and all the rest of it. And it was when Money Mountain had just done a promo, like calling out Bradford, saying like you're nothing, you're cheap and all the rest of it. And like the second my music, all of a sudden I'm a good guy again.
Well, it's kind of funny because, and then you've obviously been feuding with them as well, and I feel like you guys aren't done with them. So I would hope that we'll see that. And also, Daniel Banner wants to correct me. November the 18th. I apologize. That it's actually, you're correct because it's the Saturday. Bolton Town is the Friday the 3rd because Bolton Town shows are Friday shows. GTM shows are always Saturday. GTM Academy is growing. Yeah, I see a lot of people that have come in the academy. I've seen like Supersonic Sammy Blue's been working. I see some of the Ensor guys have been coming in there pretty frequently. I think I've heard some of the LWF guys have come in from time to time. So it's a really cool thing. And, GTM, I just want to say, and I want to say this before I get into a few more things and get to closing thoughts, and obviously my announcement for you, is GTM has always been one of my favorite companies. And here's why. Because I've always felt that the environment in GTM has always been, so welcoming. The talent has always been so very accommodating with me on Sportswire. I've had on pretty much I think even Alex Boylan came on Sportswire once. That tells you right there, right? How accommodating the roster has been. The environment, the fans are great. I've even got fans in GTM that follow me on Instagram. Some of the fans that go up there, I think Amanda, who takes the photos with her daughter, she's become a big fan. There's some of the different people that watch this stuff like when Bentley comes on because he does a spot with us regularly. And, and the message of GTM has always been positive, and it resonates with me because I'm a reverend. And GTM has always been about a positive message, helping out in the community, what you guys do, in terms of the less fortunate, and the message of, being a Christian. And I think the overall environment in GTM, I wish more companies had offered that. And I think in a larger scale, you're a part of two companies that I think have two of the best atmospheres around in GTM and in Bolton Town. And I think just again on GTM real quick, that's why I've always gone out of my way to support GTM, because I just feel like there's everything aligns with what a wrestling show should be and in GTM.
Yeah. I think I don't get why more shows don't, because you literally got a amazing platform that's live entertainment, or you can put it out on social media. You've got eyes on there. So, be some positive in the world. Do something good. There's enough negative things going around, And sometimes, wrestling is escapism.
Absolutely, especially now in this day and age. When we had Bentley on, we were talking about at the time like the food shortage and everything was going on with poverty in the UK. And, what GTM does is, or any wrestling show, you get away from everything you hear in the world, whether it's the economy, foreign policy, whatever it is, whether you're an American or, somebody who's a Brit. I feel like wrestling is that way that can connect us. We need more of that in the world, bringing people together, not being divided. And that's why I've always felt GTM is such a great company. And I want people to support GTM in any way possible. Wrestling Church FCB, GT Ministries UK on all platforms. And I want to say hello to people that have big followings that you'd be an excellent guest for. He's the host of the Nemesis Sessions. He is the legendary James Taylor. Man's got 80,000 followers out there on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. He is a superstar. He's getting ready to wrestle in New South Pro Wrestling out there, and he is from the state of Alabama. He says hello. He is one of my all-time favorites on Sportswire, just like you're one of my favorites. And he says hello, and I hope you're doing well. So I want to come back now for the rest of the show, remaining time I have, with Bolton Town Wrestling. And I have to ask you for a very brief moment before I get to my announcement, what was it like very briefly being, I say it briefly, the Bolton Town Wrestling World Champion?
For that 4 minutes, it was absolutely amazing.
I think you had a longer run than Bentley did, though, at least, when he had the first GTM run.
Yes, I did.
I told you. I knew that was coming.
5 minutes.
I knew that you had that in mind. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, no, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, that show happened to fall exactly on my birthday. It was one of our first sellout shows. We had like 170 odd people watching.
Wow.
And literally it was electric. It sounds almost cliched, but it was an electric atmosphere. Like the roof came off, got an amazing pop, and I got to celebrate my first ever title win with, again, Dean Allmark, Joey Hayes, either side of it, two legends, 20-year veterans that I look up to, and yet they're lifting my arms up. I've got the belt, and that's it. It was just an amazing experience. I know there's like a lot of people that turn around and say like wrestling titles are like props and stuff. It's very, very real. That honestly, I've got absolutely no shame in saying I may have held back a couple of tears because it was a pretty emotional moment. And I don't think anything's ever going to be that unless I win another one and I keep it longer than 4 minutes.
I would hope that you would win the next world title whenever that time comes for longer than 4 minutes, because it's like you had the title and it's like you had it. It was like with Bentley. We spoke about it with Bentley when he beat Disciple for the title, and it was like, well, Rarebit took the title right afterwards. And it's like that, like almost like you tasted it. Yeah, you had it, but it's like you didn't really have it. And it's almost like the same thing. It's kind of been the start of all the struggles that you've had. And it's funny, real quick, that you talked about Bolton Town, because we have Bentley all the time. And the Bolton Town atmosphere is just so special. You have everything. It's so well done. Isaiah Quinn, another one of my all-time favorites, is on the call for you guys. And he is just, I think he's the best talker in the business. I think he's the best manager. I think he's really just, to me, I wish that there was, every company had an Isaiah Quinn. I will say that till the day I die. He is one of my all-time favorites. So you obviously have a great atmosphere and a great crowd, and we'll certainly hope that the electricity will match us here on Bolton Fury 3. And as much as you're trying to get the championship back, you do have Mr. Jackson, and I have to bring it up to you, sir, because in your chair coming up on October the 30th, 7:30 p.m. your time, Lucas Jackson, after hearing that you were coming onto Sportswire Radio, has requested an opportunity to speak. And speaking to people that have not been on here in a long time, he hasn't been on here in, well, almost since the very beginning of Bolton Town Wrestling. He came on here, I think, after your third show, I want to say. And it's been that long. And he decided, after hearing you're coming on, he wants to tell his side of the story and why he's going to continue to make your life a living hell. That'll be October the 30th, 7:30 p.m. Your response.
Imagine that. Can't it? It's got to be one of the most personal feuds in Brit wrestling. It's not even a story. I generally don't like it.
Yeah, you guys literally, like, it's like, I thought that Jack and Bentley didn't like each other. I certainly thought Disciple and Bentley didn't like each other for a while. I mean, there was history with Boylan and Bentley. I mean, I can go on, RPD when he wrestled Andre Decker, my old friend Andre Decker. I could go on all day about certain things. In the LWF, it was Nate Reese and Bob Costin. I mean, Getsky and Reynaldo. But this one makes those look like they loved each other. You guys literally, for months, it's just like the animosity is reaching to the point where, like, I don't know if you guys can be in the same company much longer. I'm dead serious.
Well, if I get my way after November, it might not be. It might not be a storyline thing, but if I have to take him out, so be it.
But are you concerned that because of the animosity and the bad blood, that maybe that you're clouded in how you go about this, because he's going to try something. He's going to have something up his sleeve, and he tries to get out of this. But is there any concern from your vantage point? And I'm sure Mr. Jackson's going to give his side of the story in 26 days from now. But you have a thought or two on that?
I think the fact that I know he's probably going to do something stupid, reckless, or breaking the rules, I'm expecting it. I think he needs to remember, though, that while I am, the fan favourite, I'm not completely against breaking a few myself. if need be, I could go down a bit of a dark path and deal with him.
Before we get to closing thoughts, is there anything or any parting shot you would have for Mr. Jackson before he has the floor, before November the 3rd?
No, I'm sick of wasting time with him, to be honest.
So you just want to go right in the ring. You want to get this over with. You want to annihilate him, basically.
No.
Well, you know what? We're going to find out.
Build up.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest show of the year is upon us. November the 3rd. It's their WrestleMania. It's Bolton Fury 3. You're going to see a lot. You're going to see the likes of our world champion Bentley in the house. You're going to probably see Jack Johnson, who's certainly smarting off his loss. You're going to see a number of stars. Eitan Steen, my old buddy Eitan Steen, the LWF champion, is going to be there. The Wrecking Crew is going to be there. You've got Helena Razor, the women's champion. I had Helena Razor on the show about a year and a half ago. We've had a whole list of people that are a part of Bolton Town Wrestling that are going to be in action November the 3rd. But most importantly, you're going to see the war maybe to end it all. That is Lucas Jackson, the general manager, against Maverick Matt Wiliams. Maybe the most personal feud in all of wrestling this year. I've had a lot of wrestlers on, had a lot of feuds, seen a lot of stuff, but these guys, it may never be the same figuratively and literally. And I tend to think that Bolton Town very well may not be big enough for the two of us much longer. Stay tuned November the 3rd. And before I get to closing thoughts, you have a show coming up on October the 29th, if I'm not mistaken, right? CUPW you're going to be in the ring for?
I'm teaming up with AJ Grimm.
Oh, boy, of the Mafia. Boy, what a small world.
We're having a Hare Hill Stampede match with two other teams. So that's going to be chaotic. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, AJ's come on the scene here of late. We've seen him in the Mafia, obviously in BTW and GTM. I've seen him in CWE and some other places. So that's an interesting place that we'll see you in the ring on the 29th of October. So that's literally right before coming up here the 3rd of November. And is there any other places that we may see you? I know you've done some work a little bit in NSOR and some other places, but anywhere else that we may see you coming up for the audience that might want to get involved and see you in the ring?
I'm at Breakout.
Okay.
That's going to be a good match there. I think now. Due back at GT Miniatures at some point soon.
I think, right. Well, the big show is November 18th, so maybe we'll see you. That's the last GTM show of the year, I believe.
I'm not sure really after that.
I think because you know what, I think I got the schedule, and I'm pretty sure November is the last one of the year. Though I mean, there'll be Wrestling Church. I know there'll be one more Wrestling Church after that at least. But the big show, that's the big one of the year. So that's what we'll see you in there for. All right. So obviously, all great stuff. And I ask you this last question before I get to closing thoughts here. I know you've had a short amount of time in the ring, figuratively, but literally you've actually done some big things. And I always ask this question to people here on the show. Is there one or two moments that stand out most in your career so far?
Obviously, debuting in front of like 400, 500 people. You're not going to get a better debut than that, especially when you're up against like Joey Hayes and Tivo. Obviously, winning the first BTW title that I got, that was an iconic moment for me. I think there's been a lot of big moments, but I think the best is still to come, hopefully.
I'm glad you said that, because sometimes I say to wrestlers, and you've had experience and you've had some cool moments, but I actually think that's one of my lines. The best is yet to come. You haven't had your best moment yet. Yes, you've won the world title. Yes, you've been into main events, but I have a feeling with everything you're doing, the best is yet to come. And I'm telling you, the future is going to be worth it. And that's why I want people to follow Maverick Matt Wiliams, support him on Facebook. Also, Bolton Town Wrestling, Bolton Wrestling on Twitter. Also, check them out on Facebook, Instagram, support them. Bolton Town has always been, ladies and gentlemen, one of my favorite companies. Bentley's going to be back in the house. He's going to talk about, obviously, winning the title. I'll certainly, I'm sure, get an opinion or two on you and your match with that from Bentley, now that Bentley's the man on top. And obviously, also, I go back from the very beginning of Bolton Town when Franco Varga came onto Sportswire, and that was when Bolton Town was just starting out. I had Franco Varga on, and Franco's almost kind of like, in a way, a Bolton Town member without being a Bolton Town member, and he always does the UK tours. Franco's the man. Franco, another guy that I really don't understand how he's not like an AEW or WWE, but he's, a guy that does these tours, and he wrestles the big guys. He's got the look, and I won't say what somebody told me off the air, on the air once, or off the air, but I will definitely tell it to you off. I'll tell it to you personally. What I do know that somebody was looking at Mr. Mr. Varga, and I'll talk about that off the air with you. But in the meantime, it has been a tremendous honor. I could ask you many more questions, and I hope we do this again, maybe after the 3rd of November. So I now turn it over to you, sir. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? And the floor is yours, and fire away.
I think you've covered everything. Just to reiterate, give us a follow. Especially on Facebook, we're a lot more active on that than anything else. But Bolton Town Wrestling, follow the Maverick Matt Wiliams. If you're a North West England listener, please come on to one of our shows. tickets are available on Skiddle, which you get to through our Facebook. And find out why people love us so much.
Absolutely. You know what? And I'm so glad we're going to end on that because I always say Bolton Town shows have the crowd in Bolton Town is so devoted. They're such a smart crowd. You know, you look at the crowd that you guys have, the fan base. I love GTM. You know I love GTM, but the Bolton Town crowd, there's something electric with what you guys have. That fan base, they're so sophisticated. They're smart. GTM's crowd is different. It's a different type of crowd. It's a great crowd, just as good as Bolton Town's. But the Bolton Town crowd, there's something that you guys have that is very special. And that's why I want people to go to all of BTW's pages and support everything that Bolton Town has to offer. And I can't wait. And I look forward to the future, especially November the 3rd, our last show of the year, our 13th show. It's our 13th, the lucky number 13. It's called Bolton Fury 3. Will it be Maverick, Matt Wiliams? Lucky day. Stay tuned. But we're going to talk about it for sure between now and the 3rd of November with Lucas Jackson and, of course, our champion, Bentley. Congratulations, my friend, on all the success. I look forward to having you on very soon. I'm going to make sure Mr. Allmark gets wind of your comment, and I'm actually going to do that in a little while. And thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to talk with you more again and watch these shows coming up on the 3rd of November and also for GTM on November 18th.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Maverick Matt Wiliams, who's getting ready to be in the ring here on CUPW's next show on October the 29th. He's teaming up with AJ Grimm of the Modern Day Mafia, but you'll also most importantly see him on November the 3rd for Bolton Fury 3 against General Manager Lucas Jackson, one of the most nastiest and personal feuds you're going to see come around. And also Mr. Jackson will be here live on the 30th of October, 7:30 p.m. So on the same channel, same platforms here on Sportswire Radio. You can check it out. Also follow BTW and all of their platforms. My name again is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station. And we'll be back here with more coverage on Sunday with the real deal Anthony Steele. But until then, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are on the #1 global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. Thank you, everybody.